Excusez-moi, on va débuter la réunion et puis nous étions rendus.
And so I'll start the meeting, and we'd got to the amendment of Madame Sachs. And there was a sub-amendment proposal from Mr. Albus. And I think that in terms of the order of the speakers, we'd got to Mr. Bittel. I don't know if Mr. Bittel had finished, but we'd got to Mr. Bittel. And on the list, after Mr. Bittel, we had Mr. Baker, Madame Sachs, and Mr. Saini. Am I correct? Is that right? Chairman, if I want to make a so-called friendly amendment, is it the right time to do this? Or should I let all of the colleagues speak and then I'll present it afterwards? We'll put you on the list. You'll have to wait for your turn, but I've seen that your hand is up. So we will come to you in time. So, Mr. Bittel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, but if Mr. Baker's on the list, I'll let him take over from here.
Okay, Mr. Baker.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Chair. So I wanted to reiterate my support for the amendment proposed by Ms. Sachs. Nous avons entendu des fonctionnaires.
We've heard the officials from Environment and Climate Change Canada at our last meeting, and we've also heard from industry representatives dealing with waste and recycling throughout Canada. And the officials are the experts in this matter, and they work each day to maintain robust mechanisms. And I have confidence in them and what they've said to us during their testimony.
Albus has proposed in his amendment a timeline that is not achievable for a number of reasons. And you know, there are a range of deficiencies in the bill. Il y a une série de lacunes dans le projet de loi. Le manque de...
There's a whole series of gaps. There's a lack of clear definitions. There's incorrect definitions. The fact that it's impossible. I'm afraid the speaker's cut out. So, if the bill was implemented, this would mean that plastic that would normally be processed abroad would then remain in Canada, but we don't even have the means to do that. We've heard that from people who've given their testimony. We don't have any way of actually dealing with that plastic here in Canada. And even if it's possible to correct all of this, the government will need time to correct all of that.
Mr. Albus, would it be?
Yes, Mr. Chair, point of order on relevance. Again, he's speaking to other elements of the bill. We should be only speaking to my sub-amendment for proper debate, or else we will be, like last week or last meeting, endlessly talking about the same tired points that the Liberals are trying to hide behind.
So Mr. Baker, are you, you're essentially trying to address Mr. Albus's, the change he's proposing to Ms. Sachs's amendment. In other words, Mr. Albus is saying that the coming into force should be 6 months after adoption, I think it is. That's what you're speaking to, Mr. Baker?
Yeah, so I think what I was saying was perfectly relevant, Chair, because in response to the point of order, because the time, all of the things that I'm raising are relevant in determining what an appropriate time to implementation would be.
Right, okay.
And so if you need to correct deficiencies in a bill, then you need time to do that. And so I'm explaining what some of those deficiencies are for the purposes of explaining why we need more time than what Mr. Albus has proposed.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, that's relevant. Okay. Is it, are you finished your intervention?
Not yet, no.
Okay, go ahead.
No, but I promise you it's relevant, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I believe you.
Okay. So just to recap, there's a series of deficiencies in the bill, and even if it was, and I just finished listing those, which is I think what Mr. Albus was objecting to, but even if it's possible to correct all this, the government would need time to correct these deficiencies. So lors de la dernière réunion.
At the last committee meeting, we heard Mr. Albus himself recognizing that there was work to be done on this bill to correct these deficiencies. And he said that it's the responsibility of the government to actually correct these deficiencies. And the government will need time to correct these deficiencies. And what we heard from the officials on Monday was that this bill would be excessively difficult to implement right away. And the officials also said to us that the regulatory process normally takes 2 years to complete. We're not saying up to 2 years, but normally it takes 2 years, they've said. So out of full respect for Mr. Albus, I don't think that his amendment takes account of reality. And if we really try and compress the time, you can imagine where we'd land up with this amendment. Because in 6 months, the government will not be able to correct all of these deficiencies that I mentioned. And perhaps Canadians won't have had the opportunity to fully participate in the consultations, and businesses won't be able to explain their realities. So honestly, I think it'd be a real disaster, Chairman.
What we're proposing, Chair, I think what Ms. Sachs is proposing, I think, is to take into account this reality. Like what Ms. Sachs' amendment is about is ensuring the government has time to correct mistakes in the bill and pursue the regulatory process correctly that the officials highlighted for us needs to be undertaken to implement the bill properly. And I think by doing this, we can ensure that we make the most of this bill and also protect our environment, or at least not cause further damage. So j'ai dit lundi.
So as I said on Monday, Chairman, this bill is not a good bill. I think the Conservatives missed an opportunity to come up with a bill that would work well and which would resolve these issues related to recycling of plastics. But if this bill is adopted, then I think Ms. Sachs's amendment is a reasonable one. It tries to give the government the opportunity to resolve these problems. And I think that Mr. Albus's amendment doesn't take this reality into account. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And now we'll go on to Madame Sachs, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Baker, and I also want to thank Mr. Albus for being open to discussing my amendment. And while he's put forward his sub-amendment, I'd like to speak to the reason why I put this forward. I'm a fan of getting work done that is done well and with due diligence and with the proper process that needs to go through so that we come out at the other end with a bill that really does what it's meant to do and really serves the community and serves the various industries and municipalities that will be impacted by this piece of legislation that we are debating and discussing and breaking down. And officials have said to us that the process to get Bill C-204 to where it would need to be in order to be implemented well will be somewhere around a 2-year process. And I even hesitated to put a timeline on it, but to give governor and council the flexibility that they need to do the work that they need to do to get the bill in order. And without that, then we aren't doing a process of due diligence. And, my concern is that we get it right. And that's really why I put this amendment forward to colleagues of the committee to consider, so that, because at the end of the day, we really all want a good piece of legislation to go forward. That's really why we're here. That's certainly why I'm here. That's why, as a rookie MP, I can feign ignorance perhaps on some things, but I know certainly that I came here to get good done and am committed to that. And, good work takes time. It's not a process of hurry up and wait. It's not a process of hurry up and hurry up. It's a process of step by step, taking the time to discuss, to see where the deficiencies are in what's being proposed, and to make sure that we do get it right, because ultimately it's not for us, it's for Canadians. It's for the industries that will be served by this bill and what they're able to achieve in terms of moving an environmental plan forward that works well for Canadians and for communities, so that we don't have backups in landfills, that we don't have plastic being shifted off to other places that will cause harm in other parts of the world. And we want it to be a win-win, and win-wins don't happen by trying to ram something through the system. Wins happen when they're done step by step with the intention and mindfulness that needs to come with moving through a process and really unpacking it properly. And that was my intention by putting the amendment forward. And I certainly hope that colleagues will come behind that so that we can get good work done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sachs. Mr. Saini.
Thank you, Chair. I believe with the testimony that we've heard and with the comments from the officials, I mean, they've said it could take up to 2 years. My worry is twofold. One worry is the domestic sort of situation that would occur. We've received correspondence from multiple stakeholders expressing their concern. But I also think that this is not only a domestic issue, but this would also affect us internationally with our trade agreements. And I think that we need to make sure that not only does it align domestically, but it also aligns internationally. And I think that's important to look at, because this bill will not only affect our domestic sort of industry or domestic recyclers, but will also impact any trade agreements that we would have internationally. So I would just wanted to raise that point. Thank you, Chair.
Merci, Mr. Saini. Madame Posey.
Thank you, Mr. Saini. Now, Madame Posey, you have the floor. You're on mute. I'd like to bring forward a friendly amendment, I think that's what we would call it, to the sub-amendment from Mr. Dan Albus for about a year. That there have been these amendments to the Basel Convention that have been made. So for about a year now, the government has had the possibility of actually taking action and allowing businesses to know where we're heading. When we want to make a change with businesses, it needs to be predictable. So that could have already been done a year ago. So correcting the deficiencies in the bill, yes, that's fine. I'm in favour of that. So I propose as an amendment that rather than talking about 6 months, we should talk about 12 months, 1 year, because for a year now, the government hasn't really done anything. So we have to try now step up the pace. The Canadian Council Environment Ministers met back in July, and they didn't even talk about this. So we basically lost a year. So I think we now need to go for it and ensure that in a year we'll have businesses, we'll have a plan, we can talk about it, the Canadian Council Environment Ministers, when it comes to the competences of Quebec and the other provinces. So we want to help businesses. Of course, I'm in favour of that. Today we've received letters about solutions that exist in several provinces so that this waste can be turned into resources. So I suggest that the entry into force needs to be accompanied by a date. It needs to be included to Ms. Sachs' amendment so that we can count on something that's actually predictable. So that's why I'm putting forward 12 months. So you want to ask Mr. Albus if he would accept a friendly amendment to his sub-amendment to change the 6 months into 12 months, 1 year. Mr. Albus, would you accept that friendly amendment?
Opportunity to speak to it. I will gladly take the floor when you specify it.
Okay. Well,
Would that
actually,
be appropriate now?
yeah, you're next, in fact, as I see it on my system.
Well, how convenient. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would simply say to MP Posey, I appreciate the spirit of where she's going. Look, I want to just make a few things very clear. We all know from debate that Liberals are opposed to us resolving our own plastic waste for final disposal, keeping that within Canada. Conservatives think we should be able to do it. We've heard some members lament the low, this is a way to deal with it. And we have heard that there are some deficiencies. That's what the Liberal members are calling this. But let's be very clear, Mr. Chair. Number one, the way that the MP Sachs's amendment is structured is the final Hail Mary pass of this bill for the Liberals. In effect, if we were to pass her amendment without the changes proposed by Madame Posey and myself, we would in fact be allowing the government to determine when and if this law would ever actually come into force. So they are in a minority. So if this is given to the governor and council, they could postpone indefinitely or infinitely, all up to them. This is about the will of Parliament expressing itself, saying that Canada needs to be a leader, much as Australia has done. Scott Davidson has created a bill. And while I still have the floor, Mr. He said that there is deficiency in enforcement. Actually, the officials actually said that there may be difficulties compelling inspection, which is systemic to the regime itself. This bill only carves into CEPA this new provision, which is why I suggested that if the parliamentary secretary really is concerned about enforcement, that he should join with Conservatives and at the upcoming review to try to strengthen the regime so that those that are tasked with enforcing CEPA have all the tools that they need to comply, while bearing in mind that Canadian business are very honest, and if the law is changed, as Mr. Davidson has suggested in this bill, they would go a long way towards seeing their compliance, albeit there may be an actor or two that we need to work on. And that's exactly what we're proposing here. We've also heard the concerns of industry, but I will say, as a former parliamentary secretary to the president of the Treasury Board, the 2-year timeline that officials gave is for a standard review of regulations. And again, this is a very small bill, very simple changes to the schedule, for example, can be made by the minister directly within it. So this is not the same as a whole-scale revision of a set of regulations that can take 2 years. So I want to thank Madame Posé for believing that we can express ourselves as a parliament, and to also at the same time recognize some concern by the government or industry about the implementation, but at the same time giving them a timeline that is clear, that also allows them to be able to work within. So I certainly appreciate the friendly amendment, and look forward to hopefully having convinced Mr. Biddle to vote for my and Mrs. or Madame Posé's amendment today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Madame Posé for proposing a way for us to really work. I really appreciate having a committee that tries to work together even on difficult moments. I think that's critically important in the work that we do here. I'd like to actually ask the officials if they could weigh in, in light of the deficiencies and the matters that we've discussed here, and in light of, the concerns that many colleagues have expressed in the implementation process of this bill, if any of you could weigh in with us on what are reasonable and realistic timelines in addressing a bill of this nature. I know my colleague, Mr. Albas, seems to have an understanding that the timeline could be held tight. And again, I will pull my rookie card here and say I'm less familiar with these processes, and would like to hear from officials, if I may, on what their thoughts are on really getting this bill to a place that we're all comfortable with.
So which, I'm trying to see among the officials, who among the officials would like to take this question?
If it's okay, Mr. Chair, I will start, and I think you'll benefit from expertise for both Nathalie Morin and Laura Farquharson as well. I just wanted to clarify that the plastic amendments of the Basel Convention were accepted by Canada in December, and so they're now in effect. So on the question of the bill, Nathalie can maybe present some implications on operations.
Yes, thank you. So with respect to implementing the bill, there's definitely, we're going to have to look at the need to develop regulations, and the average time and optimist time, I would say, is 2 years. And that is because if we take the definitions, for example, we will need to have informal consultation before we even get into the formal consultation. And we will have to talk to people about and getting information to allow us to do the required the requirements from Treasury Board and CEPA that requires us to conduct socioeconomic analysis and environmental impact. And that, of course, takes quite a bit of efforts and time. As for amendments to a schedule of an act, the way we understand the bill as written, it would be the governor and council that would be able to make amendment to the schedule on the recommendation of the minister. That process also requires mandatory publication and consultation in the Gazette of at least 60 days. So those mandatory requirements from the Treasury Board, we must fulfill them, and this is why it would take an average of 2 years before we are able to publish in the Canada Gazette the regulation.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Ms. Sachs?
It does, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Biddle.
I guess I'd like to revisit Mr. Albus's revisionist history of the other day, especially in light of what we've just heard from officials. Let me lower my hand here. We've heard the Government of Canada has taken action on this file. I think, and I mentioned it on Monday, this is an issue that I think everyone here is interested in. Everyone here wants to see action on. And I think there's two different views of things. I think there's a view from Mr. Albus's party, which is, oh dear goodness, let us pass some environmental piece of legislation as quickly as possible, regardless of what it is, so that we can get away from the bad couple of weeks that we've been having. To say, here, we're doing something, even though there's a full acknowledgement by himself that there are flaws, that it may or may not be enforceable, that it may or may not be, investigation may or may not be possible. With respect to this amendment, and it's all coming back down to the length of time, and I appreciate Madame Posey being far more reasonable on this subject, with respect to an acknowledgement from the officials who have come to us and said this is going to need some changes. There are some issues, and it could take upwards of 2 years. And if there is going to be, if this legislation passes Parliament, don't we want to see it enacted properly? And that should be a significant concern to everyone here, especially if Ms. Collins and Mr. Albus have fully acknowledged the flaws in this bill. I would think they would want as much time as possible. I know Ms. Collins said, you know, any step forward is a good step forward, and this is a small step forward. But do we even know if that's the case? If industry is saying jobs are going to be lost, if there's concern about landfills, and I'm just coming into this at the last minute, and there's there's issues with respect to enforceability. I agree with Mr. Albus in terms of Canadian industry is well respected and are solid players with respect to this, and play by the rules. But he knows there is a certain percentage that won't, and which is why there needs to be an enforcement provision. Is to exist, it should be done in the appropriate way. So again, it's really bizarre to see a committee so gung-ho about passing legislation where there's acknowledgement that it is flawed. That there are significant problems, and perhaps there are broader problems with the act beyond this, and it should warrant some discussion. And again, I'm new. I'm getting briefed up on various elements of Environment Climate Change Canada, and look forward to my briefings on the Environmental Protection Act and issues and possibilities forward. Again, this is strange ground in my 5.5 years in this place. I don't think I've ever seen a bill like this where there's all the parties have said there are problems, there are flaws. Let's try to limit the debate, get this through, and get it done as quick as we can. This isn't a bill that is pure symbolism. This is going to have real life impacts on people's lives. And so I appreciate the significance of wanting that symbolic political win. And I think we would all like that win for the environment. Every person in this committee wants us to do better on plastic waste. And that's something I want to see. But if we're not going to do it in a realistic way, in a realistic timetable with government officials in their professional diplomatic way, waving the red flag to us, I don't know. Is there an acknowledgement by the opposition? And I believe the officials when what they're saying, that they're telling the truth. Is there not a belief from the opposition that there's exaggeration going on by the officials? Because that's what it seems like to me. Mr. Alba saying, no, it won't take that long. 6 months is fine. Now 12 months, 2 years, that can't be right. And so I take the officials at their word that that's the likely process. And if there's acknowledgement that it needs to be fixed, and it's going to take that period of time, perhaps we should be engaged in a realistic discussion of the length of time, and perhaps be more amenable to what the officials are telling us, that it's, even though we might like it to happen tomorrow, that there's a process in place, consultations in place, and though we may like it to go faster, there's a process that needs to play out for it to be appropriate, for it to be done properly. And we're not giving that to them. And if it does pass the House and if it does pass the Senate, what are we left with if the will of Parliament can't be carried out in a way that the committee and Parliament wants? At the end of the day, passing this piece of legislation and expecting that it be carried out, that it be enforced, and if we're all here and we're all saying that's going to be a problem, let's at least give ourselves some time and the proper amount of time to address these issues. So I appreciate that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd also like to thank Madame Posey. I appreciate your effort to come up with a solution which I think is more reasonable. We've just heard from our officials that if we're optimistic about this, we would need 2 years to implement this bill. If we take an optimistic view, we need 2 years. So what I wanted to do was to propose, in a spirit of cooperation, I'd like to put forward a sub-amendment, if possible, to change what Madame Posey has suggested and change 1 year to 2 years, so that we leave the necessary time to implement this bill, and that we've got enough time to actually do this effectively, as suggested to us by our officials. Madame Posey. Well, I have to put a question to the clerk. I don't know whether it's Mr. Albus and Mrs. Posey who have to agree, or just Madame Posey. So just a moment, please.
Monsieur le Président.
Chairman. So it's the law clerk here. Just a friendly amendment doesn't exist in the procedure. Now, I've seen that everyone agreed to change 6 months to 12 months, but in this case here, it's not really to Madame Posey or Mr. Albus to decide this. If everyone agrees, that's fine. But if we don't agree, then that sub-amendment cannot actually proposed. We cannot propose a sub-amendment to a sub-amendment. So we have to decide, first of all, on the sub-amendment and then continue on from there. Does everyone agree to change? No. There's not consensus, so we have to vote then. I've got Madame Collins before the vote, but after Madame Collins?
Sub-amendment as well.
What are you talking about, the 12 months, the 6 to 12?
No, I'd like to, well, are we going to be voting on Mr. Baker's sub-amendment, or are we just simply going to finish
No,
with this?
we're going to finish with this, as I understand it.
Okay.
So we're not going to change 12 months to 2 years. There's no consensus. I can sense that. So we'll go to Ms. Collins, and at some point we'll have to vote on the 12 months. So Ms. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to quickly correct the record. Mr. Biddle misrepresented my words. I clearly stated that I want this bill to be strengthened to include provisions of hazardous waste and waste for special consideration, since the Liberals have refused to ratify those Basel Convention amendments. I would like to strengthen the bill to make sure that Canada no longer uses loopholes to get around its international commitments when we're exporting to the U.S. If the Liberals truly cared about addressing the issue of exporting our waste to poor countries, they would have voted to bring this bill to committee, and they would have voted in favor of my amendments to strengthen the bill. I am concerned because of the tactics that were used in our last committee meeting and what I think I'm seeing here again, that the Liberals are just trying to delay this. But I do think that Madame Posey's amendment is a reasonable one. I'll be voting in favor of it. I hope that we can quickly move to that vote and move on so we can keep on with our committee business.
Well, we have to go to Mr. Biddle first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm here to announce the death of irony in the opposition accusing us of delaying things while the House of Commons is backlogged, while opposition parties put up dozens of speakers for amendments. And so I'm a little surprised at those allegations. All of my comments have been based on questions to officials. And again, Ms. Collins has not addressed any of the concerns raised by officials, which is surprising. These are hardworking civil servants who've brought forward their concerns and a lack of willingness to meet them. And that's, I guess, surprising. Again, this is all of my comments, all of my colleagues' comments have been based on these concerns. And again, we want to see this strengthened. We want to see more action. We want to see better action on plastic waste. Just because this isn't the proper vehicle to do it, and we asked for a few more witnesses. We asked for a little bit more time to have all the evidence in front of us, and that was denied. We're not delaying this. I think Mr. Albus accused me of being good at, or being a professional filibuster, and I that may have been suggested last time. Having sat through months on proc through amendments to the Elections Act from one particular opposition party, months and months of filibuster, I can appreciate, but none of that was substantive. None of that was based on any evidence from officials, and so. We're raising our points, we're raising concerns of industry, we're raising concerns about actually delivering on what Parliament is seeking to do. And again, though we don't see the, and we've raised our concerns with respect to the bill, at the end of the day, the Government of Canada will be required to enforce these, or excuse me, to enact these provisions. And if we're not doing so in a way that is meaningful and provides a clear path forward, again, where are we and what are we doing? And so I've just been raising concerns. The members of the committee may see this as delay. We're getting near the end of the bill. It's not much of a delay if it's been a few hours that we've been debating it. I know when Mr. Albus's party puts up 80 speakers on a bill, they say, no, we need more debate. But when the Liberals want to talk about it for an hour or two, we're based on evidence from government officials of the issues with the bill, we're engaged in a horrific filibuster against the environment. Again, perhaps the death of irony in this meeting, Mr. Chair, but I appreciate the opportunity to raise those concerns. I see Mr. Albus would like to respond, so I will, I guess, yield the floor.
Mr. Albus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Mr. Biddle for yielding the floor. For a whole host of reasons I don't have time to get into. I would just say this on the subject of irony. This government, I believe, has had legislation fly through where there have been changes that have been necessary, but I will also point out this is a piece of private members' business. There was debate in the House of Commons. There was, and it's an accelerated process, so if he doesn't like it, maybe he can speak to his House leader as to whether or not those changes in the standing orders should happen. Second, again, as a former Parliamentary Secretary of the President of the Treasury Board, I would see and do recall where areas of temporary foreign workers, when there was many concerns by many parliamentarians from all parties in 2012, that the government quickly moved through the Gazette process right to Gazette 3, skipping the normal process, because government has to be able to act on certain things where it requires. I think what Madame Posey has put here on a 3-clause bill, this is not, like changes to an entire regime like the Safe Food for Canadians regime when the Harper government put that in place, where it took many years because it materially changed the nature of how the regulator regulated. This is just a very minor change adding to the CEPA regime. And again, I would say that if members have problems with the way that CEPA currently works, perhaps the government should get on with the 2017 review and the 80+ recommendations that this committee had made at that time, but they have chosen not to bring before this Parliament. So, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to simply say 12 months we believe is enough for a very minor change. The will to do it, we'll be able to do it excellently. We know we have excellent public servants who want to see good things happen in the public interest. Let's bring this to a vote so we can move on and talk about committee business.
Well, seeing there are no other speakers, we'll have to vote on this amendment. So the amendment says that, well, basically in quotes, the amendment would be 12 months after the day on which this act receives royal assent. It's an amendment to Ms. Sachs's motion. Yeah. So yes.
Mr. Chair, just to make sure that we are on the same page, the committee will vote on the sub-amendment, the 12 months, and after they will vote on the amendment as amended.
Right. Okay. So, Madam Clerk, can you count the vote?
Yes. Mr. Baker?
In favor.
Mr. Longfield?
In favor.
Mr. Saini?
In favor.
Ms. Sachs?
In favor.
Mr. Biddle?
In favor.
Mr. Albus? No. Mr. Albus?
Sorry, in favor.
Okay. Mr. Genereux?
In favor.
Ms. McLeod?
In favor.
Mr. Redekop?
In favor.
Madame Posey?
En faveur.
Ms. Collins?
In favor.
11 yeas.
Well, it's unanimity. Okay, so now we vote on
Chair,
yeah,
Mr. Chair. Sorry, I had my hand up.
Oh yes, okay, Mr. Baker. Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. I know it's hard. You got a lot to keep track of there. I wanted to propose an amendment. I don't know if I call this an amendment or a sub-amendment. I'm open to being told which is the correct terminology, but I'd like to propose an amendment to the amendment we just voted on, which would change 12 months to 24 months.
Maybe the legislative clerk could provide some guidance here. So can we amend the sub-amendment that was just adopted?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's a admissible amendment, a sub-amendment.
Right. But it's essentially a sub-amendment.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Just I have to go backpedal a little bit. The committee has made a decision on 12 months. There's no possibility to change this. Sorry about this.
Because we're talking about months now, and we're once we've decided on 12 months, we can't keep going on about a number of months. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. The committee has made a decision. The committee has decided 12 months, and this is it.
And that's okay.
You cannot change a decision.
That's right. Okay. So, so now we vote on Ms. Sachs's amendment as amended. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Can we try unanimous consent, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Is there unanimous consent?
Yes.
Apparently there is. Did somebody say no?
I said no.
Okay, so we'll have to have a vote. Madam Clerk, can you count the votes?
Mr. Baker?
Sorry, Chair, can you clarify again? So we're voting on Mrs. Sachs's original amendment?
Yeah, 12 months as amended. So it's 12 months.
Okay, in favor.
Okay. Mr. Longfield?
In favor.
Mr. Saini?
In favor.
Ms. Sachs?
In favor.
Mr. Biddle?
In favor.
Mr. Albus?
In favor.
Mr. Generou?
In favor.
Ms. McLeod?
In favor.
Mr. Redekop?
In favor.
Madame Posé?
En faveur.
Ms. Collins?
In favor.
11 yeas.
Wow. Another unanimous vote. Okay, so we'll go now to, I guess we now proceed to, we'd be proceeding to NDP, so it carries obviously. So we proceed to NDP 2, is that correct? On the schedule?
Yes, on the schedule with NDP 2.
Yeah. Does it need to formally be moved?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Ms. Collins?
I would like to move the amendment, and I'm just flipping between screens. I don't have it in front of me, but maybe I can speak to the spirit of the amendment, which is to add PVC to the list, to the schedule. It's one of the pieces that is in the Basel Convention list. It was missing. It's one of the most toxic plastics when it is out in our environment, and I'm hoping that I'll have the support of the committee to add this.
We'll see what Mr. Albus has to say about it. Okay, Mr. Albus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank MP Collins for this contribution. I know she spoke a lot about strengthening the bill. I believe this does that.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, maybe we could vote on it, unless there's is there unanimous consent?
Yes.
Great. So that carries. Are there any other amendments that we need to? I know there was I think Madame Posé has an amendment, but is Madame Posé moving this amendment? Well, we've already sort of dealt with this, I guess. We'll wait.
On l'a déjà fait.
Yes, we've already done it, Chairman. Yes, entered into force. So the schedule is carried as amended. And shall the title carry? Yes, unanimous consent. And shall the bill carry? Do we have unanimous consent?
Le projet de loi tel.
Chairman, so it's the bill as amended. Shall it carry? So.
I'd like a recorded vote, Mr. Chair.
D'accord. Alors, est-ce qu'on peut compter les voix?
So can we count the votes, please, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Baker?
Opposed.
Mr. Longfield?
Opposed.
Mr. Saini?
Opposed?
Ms. Sachs?
Opposed.
Mr. Biddle?
Opposed.
Mr. Albus?
In favor.
Mr. Generu?
In favor.
Ms. McLeod?
In favor.
Mr. Redekop?
In favor.
Madame Posé?
En faveur.
Ms. Collins?
In favor.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
Okay, so the bill carries. Shall the chair report the bill as amended to the House?
Yes.
Is there unanimous consent?
Recorded vote, please. Sure.
Okay. Let's, Madame Posé, vous avez votre main levée.
Madame Posé, you've got your hand up? Yes, I was just wondering, for a bill, I think we can put forward a complementary report or a supplementary letter. Is there a deadline for sending in something like that? I think it's just for committee reports that we can do that. Well, I had some training yesterday with the law clerks, and they said that after Chairman intervenes the law clerk. In fact, when it's a report on division or a complementary report, it's just for substantive reports. When there's a report that's linked to a bill, you can't do that unless the committee does an independent study which is not related to the bill directly, as we've done today, clause by clause. There's no distant opinion or complementary report that we can do. Okay, I have another request then, if you allow me, Chairman. At one point, I'd asked to get complementary information from the departments. Just a moment to find my papers. For the subsidies to the plastic industry. And nothing has been brought forward as far as I know. Is this still in the machine, in the pipeline somewhere? We're going to get that? Perhaps we can put that question to Ms. Ryan, because this was a request that we made to the officials. Do you know about this request, Madam Ryan? Yes. And the answer to the request should be moving up through the system. So, shall the committee order a reprint of the bill as amended for the use of the House at report stage? Do we agree to that? I imagine yes. So I think that we've finished, haven't we? So well done to the members of the committee. We have adopted, I think, our first bill. Yes, Mr. Longfield, go ahead.
Sorry, I had my hand up for a little bit.
Sorry, go ahead.
I haven't been involved with a study where a bill like this has gone through without the discussions on amendments, and this has been a very unique situation for me. I'm wondering about the testimonies that we've received, the background information. What happens to that information? Does that go through with the bill? Does it just stay on the public domain? We've had a lot of discussion, including from officials, about enforcement. What happens to all that information since there isn't a report being generated?
Madam Clerk?
The information is made available in the minutes and in the transcripts, and that is publicly available on the committee's website.
But what about these letters? I think Mr. Longfield's asking about letters that we've requested. Or
yes, exactly.
Like letters
Posey
that have been sent in even unsolicited.
And Madame Posey also made a comment about things coming back from officials. How do we include that in? Does that get transmitted in any way?
It gets circulated to members of committee. They get translated and circulated to the members of the committee.
Okay, and so they're not publicly available unless somebody approaches a member of the committee and says, "Can you share this with?"
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, I hope that answers your question, Mr. Longfield. So congratulations to the committee. I think it's our first bill that we've adopted at committee stage. So we now, the plan was to end the meeting and then some of us to reconvene as part of the steering committee. So I'm gaveling the meeting.
Mr.
Yes.
Mr.
Well,
Chair,
the
sorry.
meeting's gavelled, but we can still chat.
Okay, well, I was just going to tell the committee that this